If you've been following the content that I create on the channel here over the last while, I'm sure you'll have known by now that I'm a massive fan of classic survival horror. Anything that looks, feels and plays like classic Resident Evil in that format, or even anything similar to it, I'm generally curious and want to know more about and generally eager to play it. So what's great about the modern landscape with games, while we do have access even to play the older games, either if you have the original hardware or even with emulation, it's still a great way to play these classics. But I think with modern times, we are starting to see some very interesting experiences. Now a lot of them are still in development, although there are demos that are available that you can try the game out for yourself to see what you think. And I do genuinely believe they are worth experiencing because they can offer something from a new perspective, but also is relatable to a lot of the classic elements from games that we know and love growing up. And they're definitely worth a try just for those experiences alone. And with this game Scarlet Lake, that's still currently in development, there is a demo available that you can get on Steam. I'll leave a link to it down in the description. And while it is still available, I would highly recommend you check this game out. This is one of the many games that I've played over the last while that's very reflective of classic survival horror, but does have a different, interesting take on it. While it still uses the typical likes of tank controls and the different perspectives, but it uses almost like an isometric kind of style viewpoint. It kind of puts you in mind of gameplay elements that you would have seen on the likes of Parasite Eve from the PS1. While it had like fixed cameras to a degree, but when you went into different rooms, it almost like the room was like squared off, that it was its own entity. So the environment or the set piece would become the main focal point of the experience, which I really like. And the fact is that you can see it and everything is there, especially if you like exploration and you want to find items of interest, because you will need to do a lot of that in this game. Typical like your more mainstream survival horror games, you'll always have to be hunting for ammo, health, resources, keys. You'll even find pieces like of scrap lying around which you can use to upgrade your weapons. There's certain like sheds or areas that you can go back to where you'll have tables that you can use. Very in mind of the likes of The Last of Us on the PS3 and even on modern systems. There'll be certain points in the game where you can go to that you can use to upgrade all of your assets and resources, especially your weapons, to make them stronger and more versatile, which you will need later on as you come up against more stronger enemies. So a lot of those elements make their way here, but they do a good job in presenting them in their own format and their own style. So even with regards to the story of this game here, you play as a character that's actually on a quest, especially in the beginning with the demo, to try and find your missing girlfriend in the likes of a town that has been barricaded off from the rest of the world or society, to quickly find out that there's a lot of horrible experiments and secrets that are being taken place, which eventually becomes home to a whole host of different demonic entities, monsters, almost very like Resident Evil, like as if there was bioweapon experiments where humans were the test subjects and all became infected. So you have zombies walking around, but then they also mutate into different creatures that are even more devastating and terrifying. And while the demo represents an early rendition of the game, from what I've seen on other segments, even with the Steam page itself, it shows later portions of the game where you play as like a completely different character, like a detective that is sent in to investigate the ongoings within the small town itself. So the gameplay will definitely cater and take from different perspectives that intertwines the story. So that in itself is quite interesting. On the surface you might think, right, it doesn't present anything new, which it probably doesn't when you compare it to a lot of other games in a similar format, which there are a lot of them that are out there that are starting to show up. But all of these games do present a way to take something of old but also add in something that's slightly different from a different point of view or a different perspective, which is always good to see. And for me personally, I can never tire of these type of games because they're among my favourite to play in general within video games. So they are definitely worth a look, as they always add an air of curiosity and intrigue that you're always wanting to know more. And that's what I enjoy about these games. The fact is that you're trying to uncover the story while you're also trying to search for everything to try and help you along that way. And these games do a good job in doing that. Now while this demo is quite relatively short compared to a lot of others that are out there, it still definitely gives you a good synopsis as to what you'd expect when the full game does come out, so hopefully we won't have to wait long for that to happen, as I think that this will genuinely be a very interesting title to say the least, and definitely one of the better modern indie survival horror games that we've seen in recent times, as it has a lot of throwbacks to the likes of classic survival horror, starting off like in a small town that's been cordoned off and then an outbreak occurs. Like when you think of it, where have we seen that before? But it just works so well. well, but it presents its own interesting story with it, which for those that are curious, you'll want to know more about it, so I definitely think it'll be worth a look. But still, I would love to know your thoughts of Scarlet Lake if you have played the demo yourself, which there will be a link for in the description if you haven't, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, so make sure to share them down in the comments below. And with that being said, this is just but one of many interesting horror games that are still in active development, that will be released at some point, that are still worth playing even to get the glimpse of classic survival horror. And if you want to know more about these games, it might be worth checking out this next video.